Have you ever wanted to see your writing or art published but had no idea where to start? In this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly how to submit to literary magazines, step by step, even if you've never done it before. And the best part, you don't need an agent, connections, or a huge following to get started. Okay, a couple disclaimers as usual. If there's any background noise, I do apologize in advance. But the most important disclaimer is that this is not a guarantee that your work is going to get published. This is just meant to be a guide and some helpful advice. Results do vary. But with that, let's get started. So, what even is a literary magazine and why should you submit to one? Literary magazines are publications that feature creative writing, like short stories, poetry, personal essays. They can also include photography and multimedia pieces. These magazines can be found online or in print, and they often publish both new and established writers. This is a really easy and accessible way to get your work published. And on the screen right here, I do have a definition from A Commonplace, which is a literary journal. I'm going to link all the websites and resources that I mentioned down in the description. I consider myself a qualified resource in this area just because I have had some poems and pieces of photography published in literary magazines, and I will dive into that a little bit later. I'll show you exactly which ones I've had. To begin with, where would we even find journals to submit to? So one of my favorite resources is Chill Subs. It's just a website that has a lot of resources for writers, and they literally have a magazines tab where you can just go and browse all the different magazines. And I love this website because it tells you when the deadline is, whether it costs money to submit or not, because some do, and some publications are free to submit to, some do charge a small fee. It also lets you know whether this publication can pay you, so this is also a cool way to earn a little bit of money. And my second favorite way to actually find them is on Instagram. That's actually how I got started with literary journals. You can also just literally go up to Instagram and type in the search bar literary journals, and it will populate a bunch of them for you, so you can just click through there. And one thing I do is I'll go to a literary journal I follow, and then I'll just go through their followers and see what other journals they're following, because a lot of these journals on Instagram will follow each other. And so it's just a cool way to gain awareness of which journals have open submissions, or which journals really resonate with your type of art. So those are my two favorite ways to find them. Of course, you can always just go into Google or ChatGPT and search literary journals. Once you have found your magazine, our second step is to read all the rules. And I'm gonna say this is a really important step because not every journal has the same process for submission. Some ask you to email them, some ask you to use Submittable, that's a website, some ask you to use a Google form. 9 times out of 10, the journals will be very specific about what they're looking for. So right here I have the rules for Bloodlust magazine submissions. That is a journal I've actually submitted to, and they tell you the exact format that your documents should be. They tell you if there's a word limit, they give you guidelines for your file types, things like that. And the reason this is so important is because if you don't follow these rules, they will automatically reject you. The rules will also usually state when you'll hear back from them, whether your piece got submitted or not, and their policies towards being emailed about questions, because these magazines, these poor editors do get bombarded with questions every day. So the rules are there to help you answer any questions you might have. And now that we have found our magazine and read our rules, it's time to start writing. So the first thing we're going to do is theme our piece. So most journals will usually have a theme for their submission period, but sometimes they won't. Sometimes you can literally just submit whatever, but I believe a strong piece is one that has a theme, has a story behind it. So just kind of choose a theme that you think either aligns well with the journal and fits within the journal's aesthetic, and then that will just help brainstorming and finding what to create easier. And now that we've created our piece, whether we wrote an essay, wrote a poem, or took a picture, we have to edit that. And I put 3 exclamation points because of course, you're never going to reach perfection in the creative process, but it's important to go over your work, especially to make sure there's no typos, no spelling errors, especially if you are writing, because that can be a sign of being an amateur and those pieces may sometimes get rejected. So make sure you have a friend, a writing partner, make sure you have somebody go over your work. You could also just show your piece to friends and family and ask if they think that this fits the theme of the journal, if this fits the submission. That's something I do with my photography. I'll literally message people in my picture and be like, does this give this theme? And they'll be like yes or no, and then from there I'll decide whether that's the piece I want to go with, because sometimes when you get feedback you realize, oh, this isn't as strong as I thought it was, can pivot and either edit it or work on a different piece. So getting feedback is a very important part of the process, so do not skip that. It's also important to remember to do all this stuff in a timely manner. Again, some of these magazines have a submission window, so they'll be taking submissions for about a month or like once or twice a year. So it's really important to just stay on top of that, because if you miss the deadline, like that's it. You know, you can't email being like, oh, I'm sorry, I missed the deadline, can I have an opening? No, they're probably not going to accommodate that, because that's just not fair. Just be sure you stay on top of that. Going back to the beginning when we talked about reading the rules and making sure we know everything we need to know before we start. And in order to make sure that we are staying on top of everything, it is important to track your submissions. And so right here, I actually shared my Google Sheets tracker, and I'm gonna be so for real, I don't make the most sophisticated Google Sheets, but right here you can see all the work I've submitted, and I have like the names of my piece, and I put poem, but some of these are not poems, some of these are photographs, but I guess it would be the name of my piece. And then I have which platform I submitted to, I have the date I submitted it on, and then I have whether I hear response. And you're gonna be like, well, Kat, didn't you just say to like know the deadline of when it's due? This is just kind of the way I do it. I write them in order of importance, so ones that are like at the top were the ones that were due first. This is just kind of my process, but be sure to edit and make your sheet however you need to. I'm sure there's way more sophisticated techniques out there that you can probably do, but this is what works for me, and that's what's important. Once we've submitted and we are waiting in agony to hear back, or we just get entirely ghosted, because that happens too, so we can just assume that we heard a no, the important thing is to keep going. You're not going to hear yes on your first try, okay? It took me at least 3 attempts to hear yes, and I had to wait a really long time. Like, I submitted, but it does help to submit to multiple things at one time, because then you're not just caught up on waiting to hear back from this one place. You have other publications to look for, you have other places you know your writing can be accepted. And as we discussed in the beginning, there are just so many journals out there, so just because you heard a no does not mean your piece is not good. It may have just not been a fit for that journal, and there would be another journal that is more aligned and would love to have that piece. So remember to keep going, don't give up. It's really rewarding to see your work out there and to be featured in these publications, so I definitely recommend it for anyone who's looking to get their work out there. And that is all I have for y'all today. If y'all have any questions or want a little more clarity on any of these steps, do let me know down in the comments, as well as any other videos you would like to see from me. I'm so happy to see that we're growing here on the channel, and this is like my little patriotic caveat for the year, because I don't do this often. I think that just being creative is something that is being slept on right now in our society, and I just want to create a space where we still value sharing our story, because that's always going to be so important. But I just wanted to say thank y'all all so much for all your support. Keep liking, commenting, interacting with the channel, and I am so excited to see what's next. So good luck with your submissions, and I will see you in the next video.